said Pilgrim. Elder brother, said 8 Rules. You are quite clever, quite capable in those transformations. Aren't those skills something already? What more abilities do you have? Pilgrim said. Cut off my head and I still can speak. Sever my arms, I still can beat you up. My legs amputated, I still can walk. My belly, ripped open, will heal again. Smooth and snug as a wonton people make. A tiny pinch and it's completely formed. To bathe in boiling oil is easier still. Like warm liquid cleanse me of dirt it will. When 8 Rules and Sha Monk heard these words, they roared with laughter. Pilgrim went forward and said, Your Majesty, this young priest knows how to have his head cut off. How did you acquire such an ability? Asked the king. When I was practicing austerities in a monastery some years ago, said Pilgrim. I met a mendicant Chan master, who taught me the magic of head cutting. I don't know whether it works or not, and that's why I want to try it out right now. This priest is so young and ignorant, said the king, chuckling. Is head cutting something to try out? The head is, after all, the very fountain of the 6 kinds of young energies in one's body. If you cut it off, you'll die. That's what we want, said Tiger Strength. Only then can our feelings be relieved. Besotted by the Taoist's words, the foolish ruler immediately gave the decree for an execution site to be prepared. Once the command was given, 3,000 imperial guards took up their positions outside the gate of the court. The king said, Monk, go and cut off your head first. I'll go first. I'll go first, said Pilgrim merrily. He folded his hands before his chest and shouted, State preceptors, pardon my presumption for taking my turn first. He turned swiftly and was about to dash out. The Tang monk grabbed him, saying, Oh disciple, be careful. Where you are going isn't a playground. No fear, said Pilgrim. Take off your hands. Let me go. The great sage went straight to the execution site, where he was caught hold of by the executioner and bound with ropes. He was then led to a tall mound and pinned down on top of it. At the cry, Kill! His head came off with a swishing sound. Then the executioner gave the head a kick, and it rolled off like a watermelon to a distance of some 40 paces away. No blood, however, spurted from the neck of Pilgrim. Instead, a voice came from inside his stomach, crying, Come, head. So alarmed was the dear strength great immortal by the sight of such ability that he at once recited a spell and gave this charge to the local spirit and patron deity. Hold down that head. When I have defeated the monk, I'll persuade the king to turn your little shrines into huge temples, your idols of clay into true bodies of gold. The local spirit and the god, you see, had to serve him since he knew the magic of the 5 thunders. Secretly, they indeed held Pilgrim's head down. Once more Pilgrim cried, Come, head. But the head stayed on the ground as if it had taken root. It would not move at all. Somewhat anxious, Pilgrim rolled his hands into fists and wrenched his body violently. The ropes all snapped and fell off. At the cry, Grow! A head sprang up instantly from his neck. Every one of the executioners and every member of the Imperial Guards became terrified, while the officer in charge of the execution dashed inside the court to make this report. Your Majesty, that young priest had his head cut off, but another head has grown up. Sha Monk, said 8 Rules, giggling. We truly had no idea that Elder Brother has this kind of talent. If he knows 72 ways of transformation, said Sha Monk, he may have altogether 72 heads. Hardly had he finished speaking when Pilgrim came walking back, saying, Master. Exceedingly pleased, Tripitaka said. Disciple, did it hurt? Hardly, said Pilgrim. It's sort of fun. Elder brother, said 8 Rules. Do you need ointment for the scar? Touch me, said Pilgrim, and see if there's any scar. Idiot touched him, and he was dumbfounded. Marvelous, Marvelous. He giggled. It healed perfectly. You can't feel even the slightest scar. As the brothers were chatting happily among themselves, they heard the king say, "Receive your rescript. We give you a complete pardon. Go away." Pilgrim said, "We'll take the rescript, all right, but we want the preceptor of state to go there and cut his head off too. He should try something new." "Great preceptor of state," said the king. "The priest is not willing to pass you up. If you want to compete with him, please try not to frighten us." Tiger Strength had no choice but to go up to the site, where he was bound and pinned to the ground by several executioners. One of them lifted the sword and cut off his head, which was then kicked some 30 paces away. Blood did not spurt from his trunk either, and he, too, gave a cry. "Come, head." Hurriedly pulling off a piece of hair, Pilgrim blew on it his immortal breath, crying, "Change." It changed into a yellow hound, which dashed into the execution site, picked up the Taoist's head with its mouth, and ran to drop it into the imperial moat. The Taoist, meanwhile, called for his head 3 times without success. He did not, you see, have the ability of Pilgrim, and there was no possibility that he could produce another head. All at once, bright crimson gushed out from his trunk. Alas! Though for wind and rain he can send and call, 'gainst a right fruit god he's no match at all. In a moment he fell to the dust, and those gathered about him discovered that he was actually a headless tiger with yellow fur. The officer in charge of the execution went again to memorialize. "Your Majesty," he said, "the great preceptor of state's head was cut off, but it could not grow back again. He perished in the dust, and then he became a headless tiger with yellow fur." On hearing this, the king paled with fright and stared at the remaining 2 Taoists with unblinking eyes. Rising from his cushion, Dear Strength said, "My elder brother must have been fated to die at this particular moment. But how could he be a yellow tiger? This has to be that monk's roguery. He is using some kind of deceptive magic to change my elder brother into a beast. I won't spare him now. I insist on having a competition of stomach ripping and heart gouging." When the king heard this, he calmed down and said, "Little priest, our second preceptor of state wants to wage another contest with you." "This little priest," said Pilgrim, "has not eaten much prepared food for a long time. The other day when we were journeying to the west, a kind patron kept asking us to eat, and I stuffed myself with more pieces of steamed bread than I should have taken. I have been having a stomachache since, and I fear that I may have worms. This contest, therefore, can't be more timely, for I want very much to borrow your Majesty's knife to rip open my stomach, so that I may take out my viscera and clean out my stomach and spleen before I dare proceed to see Buddha in the western heaven." When the king heard this, he gave the order, "Take him to the execution site." A throng of captains and guards came forward to pull and tug at Pilgrim, who pushed them back, saying, "I don't need people to hold me. I'm going to walk there myself. There's one thing, however. I don't want my hands tied, for I want to wash and clean out my viscera." The king at once gave the order, "Don't tie his hands." With a swagger, Pilgrim walked down to the execution site. Leaning himself on a huge pillar, he untied his robe and revealed his stomach. The executioner used a rope and tied his neck to the pillar. Down below, another rope strapped his 2 legs also to the pillar. Then he wielded a sharp dagger and ripped Pilgrim's chest downward, all the way to his lower abdomen. Pilgrim used both his hands to push open his belly, and then he took out his intestines, which he examined one by one. After a long pause, he put them back inside, coil for coil, exactly as before. Grasping the skins of his belly and bringing them together with his hands, he blew his magic breath on his abdomen, crying, "Grow." At once his belly closed up completely. So astonished was the king that he presented with both his hands the rescript to Pilgrim, saying, "Holy monk, please do not delay your westward journey any further. Take your rescript and leave. The rescript is a small matter," said Pilgrim, chuckling. How about asking second preceptor of state to go through with the cutting and ripping? Don't put the blame on us," said the king to Dear Strength. "It's you who wanted to be his opponent. Please go. Please go. Relax," said Dear Strength. "I don't think I'll ever lose to him. Look at him." He even imitated the swagger of Pilgrim's son as he headed for the execution site. There he was bound with ropes, and then his stomach was also ripped open by the dagger of the executioner. He, too, took out his guts and manipulated them with his hands. Pilgrim at once pulled off a piece of his hair, on which he blew a mouthful of his divine breath, crying, "Change." It changed into a hungry hawk. Spreading its wings and claws, it flew up to the Taoist and snatched him clean of his guts. Then it flew off somewhere to enjoy its catch leisurely, while the Taoist was reduced to, of torn belly and empty trunk, a ghost so drippy, with less innards and no guts, a soul most ditzy. Kicking down the pillar, the executioner dragged the corpse over to have a closer look. Ah, it was actually a white-coated deer with horns. The officer in charge of the execution again ran hurriedly to make the report. Second preceptor of state is most unlucky. As his stomach was ripped open, his viscera were snatched away by a hungry hawk. After he perished, his original form was a white-coated deer with horns. More and more alarmed, the king asked, "How could he turn into a deer with horns?" The goat Strength, great immortal, said, "Yes, how could my elder brother die and turn into the form of a beast? It has to be the magic of that monk, used by him to plot against us. Let me avenge the deaths of my elder brothers."